are all wrong. You want only what gives you pleasure. You want only what gives you pleasure. See, as Matt said earlier, the focus isn't on the fighting. The focus isn't on the fact that we come against other people. The focus is on within us. What is causing you to fight? What is causing couples to fight against each other? What is causing parents to fight against their kids? What is causing friendships to suffer? What is causing relationships to break down? And there's so many other things. And it's such a broad thing. But what is it that's causing it? See, in this world, it is telling us that to be successful, you have to be prideful. Or it's actually a good thing to be prideful. It's a good thing to have pride about yourself. It's a good thing to have pride about what you do. And it's such a risky thing. And I tell you what, it's the foundation of why this world is messed up. Because they've got their whole focus wrong. You look at the TV, you look at the magazines, everything is focused on self. Everything is focused on making yourself better, making yourself appear better, making yourself above other people. I mean, I was told in my career that to push further, to go to the nth degree, even if it means someone else is pushed back. To go further, to go higher. Because when you get there, you're going to be happier. When you get there, it'll just make you feel so good. But one thing that's really important to realize this morning is that you get into that frame of mind, you get into that position where you're just pushing forward, no matter what the cost, even if it's destroying things that you love and mean most to you. If you are pushing forward in that line, it's only going to be temporary. You're only going to be happy for a certain amount of time until that happiness dwindles and your focus gets set on something else. There is always something more to had when it comes to pride, when it comes to our own self. I mean, I've talked to a guy that went through a divorce up in Brisbane. And I remember asking him, what was it that broke your relationship down? And he said, in the end, we just didn't talk. And I said to him, there's got to be more than that. Where'd it begin? And he said, you know what, I just literally didn't want to spend time with her. I said, okay. So in other words, that's your own choice, your own pride, your own self-centeredness. And I mean, we can relate that to so many other things as to why things break down, why our happiness suddenly becomes from a point of happiness. I say happiness for a reason and not joy. Going from a point of happiness to a point of complete and utter disarray. I mean, has anyone here purchased exercise equipment? Put your hand up. Everyone here purchased exercise equipment. Who's used Denos? Who's used Denos? Cass? Who's used... Who with that exercise equipment, who bought it, who is still using it on a regular basis? You guys are amazing. That's good. So one thing is, what was your frame of mind before you actually purchased it? Was your frame of mind, if I buy this exercise equipment, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to get trim, and I'm going to feel so much better about myself? And what happens? You buy the exercise equipment, and it works for a little while, makes you happy for a little while, and then suddenly something else takes your mind, something else takes your focus, and suddenly it gets pushed to the side. Temporary happiness is what I'm talking about. One thing that's really in my heart is the whole side of sexual sin, the whole side of sexual satisfaction. I mean, it's so often why relationships break down is this whole side of sexual satisfaction. I mean, it goes into pornography and different things like that. But it takes our focus off the one who we should love to ourselves and filling our own desires. And that's what breaks my heart. That's what gets me so irate about this whole world that's out there and how many websites that are coming up at the moment in regard to it. But it's just it's such a side issue, but it's such a big one that we have to stay away from with a passion. See, there's no point in trying to satisfy our temporary happiness because it can never be satisfied. That's what I'm trying to get at. It can never be satisfied. And that's what I want us to realize this morning. And that's what I want us to simply leave this place in realizing that first point is our temporary happiness is temporary for a reason. It cannot be satisfied. Our pride and what we want cannot be satisfied. So we've talked about pride. And something I've talked to Matt about this week is it's funny, straight away when I started even writing this sermon and thinking about it, was straight away I could talk about this whole pride thing so much. But then I started thinking about humility. And I started thinking, what do I write about humility? And I think that's the thing. It's hard for us to focus on humility because it's such a difficult thing to have in our life. Has anyone seen that Undercover Boss show? Undercover Boss show. If you haven't seen this show, it's where these big CEO guys, these guys that have climbed the ranks and gone to these top positions and leading these big companies, all right? Then what they do, they spend 7 days, 1 week, and they take themselves from their position, their team is in agreement, they take themselves from that position and they go spending each day in a separate employment within their company. But they make it really distinct into where they go and try and cover the broad range of the hardest workers within their company. And that means going down to the people that get paid the lowest. And one thing that comes out of this, after the 7 days have gone and their eyes have been completely opened, it's amazing the humility that these bosses, these big CEOs had before, the difference between it before and the difference after. So often, I think in every show that I've heard, the quote in approximate words, the boss says, is this week has been the most impacting week I've ever had in this position. And all they've done is taken themselves from their point of leadership, from their point of leading something so big, to their point of humility, to their point of meeting the low and meeting where people are at. And I think that's what God's getting at. I think in this life, when we put ourselves in the position where we're meeting people where they're at, rather than putting ourselves above anyone else, that's where it's at. That's where it begins. So what does it mean to live a life that's humble? The other thing is, in this world, when it comes to humility, straight away, we start thinking, oh, they're a walkover. Oh, if someone's humble, oh, they're just, they're such wimps. It presents meekness. But one thing that God tells us straight out is that grace is where the power is. Grace is where the power is. C.S. Lewis said a quote, "Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less." Not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. See, I thought about humility. Where can we learn where humility is found? Where can we learn? The ideal place is the example of Jesus Christ. He came to this earth to be humble.